Fleetwood Mac with Seven Wonders. 11 minutes past 5, mainland Spain. 11 minutes past 4 in the UK and the Canaries. Joining us is BayRadio International's new US correspondent, and Rich Reynolds is here. You have a smile on your face every time I've said that this afternoon.
I love it.
You do?
I love being an international correspondent. It's an international man of mystery. Thank you, Kim.
You're loving being back in a radio studio, aren't you?
I do. It's been a couple of years since I've been on a radio station, so sure. I love it.
We've told the audience a little bit about you on our Facebook page, but you could perhaps enlighten us on air. Tell us where you're from.
Originally, I was born and raised in New York, most specifically out on Long Island. So I'm a Long Island boy. And then when I was in college, I went to college in the Midwest. And then I lived for the last 21 years on the West Coast in Portland, Oregon. So I consider myself an Oregonian. To a great deal. So I moved around. I worked at a lot of television stations, a lot of radio stations. So we moved around quite a bit. I lived in New York, and I lived in Richmond, Virginia. I lived in St. Louis. I lived in New Orleans, where I met my beautiful wife. So yeah, moved around quite a bit. I'm a gypsy like you.
So these days, Valencia. Why Spain?
5 years ago. Yeah, 5 years ago. It's kind of funny that my wife's job ended at the same time my job ended. It's one of these things where they started to phase people out. And I remember we'd sit there and she'd go, oh, they eliminated this job or that job, and now they're moving everything to a different city.
Hey, we've got AI to come. It's going to get us all.
I knew. It was like watching a tidal wave come in, and you're seeing that wave out there, and it starts coming in. And so we finally said, we got to, look at making some moves here. And we had visited Spain, and we really loved it. So we thought, well, why don't we sell everything that we own, our car, our house, and away we go. And that's what we did 5 years ago. So, yeah.
How difficult was that? I know we were just going through the numbers, weren't we, of American expats in Spain. And we know there's about 40,000, mostly centered in Madrid. But we found a top five, which said Barcelona actually top, then Madrid, then Valencia, Malaga, and Sevilla. So your Valencia, there is the third biggest.
What is the Valencia number?
I didn't come up there.
Oh,
actually,
okay.
But we'll find it. That was basically the order of how many American expats are in Spain. So what is it? What you said you've been here on holiday and you liked it. Yep. What brings them? It's not easy to do because just like Britain these days. Now we're not in the EU, a third country. Moving to somewhere in Europe isn't straightforward, is it?
No, it isn't. And we had to go through every major city in America has they have an embassy. And so we went through the one in San Francisco, and we applied through their website, and then we had to go and talk to the people and provide the fact that we had a certain amount of money, because we all know you have to, if you're an expat, you have to have money to live here. You can't just go, hey, look, I'm here. I'm a cool guy. Oh, come on in. We wanted more cool guys, cool Americans coming in. But in this case, we had to sell our house, sell everything we owned. Spent a lot of time in thrift stores giving our stuff away. Our daughter was entering college at the time, so that was a little. I take that back. She had just graduated from college, so she was. That's a whole different thing.
And of course, she's still in New York.
She's still in New York.
It's a long way.
She is. But when we were living in Portland, it was a 6-hour flight. And living here, it's a 7-8 hour flight. So it's not a great distance. But she wasn't really happy that her parents were moving, and she's our only child. So, but she's a fully formed adult working. She works in the art industry. She works at a gallery in Manhattan. So we thought, there comes a point in your life where you look at it and you go, should I make the leap?
If I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it.
How long the people? I'm really amazed that you made this leap. And I said, well, you could do it too. Oh no, I got grandchildren and stuff. I don't have grandchildren, but I looked at it and said, I said, never know that I know of. I said, but life's an adventure, right? Look, same thing for you or anybody else. Life is an adventure if you don't take advantage of it. But some people just don't. It doesn't appeal to them. I have a brother in New York, 2 brothers, as a matter of fact, and neither of them travel. They don't. If they were to travel more than 30 miles, it'd be amazing.
But we've heard this about people in America who don't actually have a passport because they don't need one.
Yeah.
They just don't travel that far. If they go anywhere, it's not that far out of state. Incredible. Why then Spain? Because I know you said you've been here, but a lot of Americans have their roots in Europe, don't they? And we've been talking in the studio, well, before you've come on air, about how your family are from the UK and from Germany, actually, right? Post-war, immediate post-war Germany. So why not perhaps Germany or UK, somewhere that was more closer to your roots?
I liked UK, and I liked the possibility, but when it happened, what was going on was Brexit, and it didn't look like a healthy thing. And I remember we moved here during Brexit because we've been here 5 years, and when it was happening, we saw all these Brits running around with their hair on fire. What am I going to do? My summer home, and how's it going to affect my taxes, and how's it going to affect this? And we said, man, I don't want any part of this. But another thing is, if you live in Oregon, as we did, it's cold, damp, every day. And we would go 6 months without seeing the sun. And if I go to England,
same thing.
And why do I want to trade? But when we came here, sun was out. The economy was not great, but we had enough money where we could.
Well, the dollar was good post the international financial crisis. The dollar was all right coming out of that, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, that wasn't a problem. But we looked at it and we said we really liked the weather. We loved the people. We found out there were a lot of Americans here. There were a lot of Brits here. Language is not, and we had to learn how to speak Spanish, which we've done.
A lot of Americans do. Actually, only speak Spanish.
I know. That's true. But my family on my mother's side comes from Britain. I'm a second-generation American. They came from London, and my father's side came from northern Germany, near
Celle, near Hanover. Not far from where I used to live.
Yeah, it's a great area, but also cold, damp, rainy. So we looked at everything and we said, this sounds pretty good. It sounded pretty good, and if it didn't work out. We looked at Barcelona, but Barcelona, very expensive.
Yeah, true.
There's the whole Catalan thing. The language is a problem. It's a little bit unsettled.
And certainly it was, if you go a bit further back, it really was right at the time when it was unsettled.
It was.
Where they had the, well, it's okay now that they had the referendum.
I know.
There's the, we're all friends again, apparently. Well, some people are.
I know. But I love traveling all around Europe and stuff. It's a great location if you're going to travel to live on in this part of the world.
A little bit more about you then. Okay, you spent all of that time from 17 working in radio and TV.
Yeah,
amazing. What got you into TV at the beginning or radio at the beginning?
Oh, it sounded like it was great fun. On top of that, I'm a classic introvert. I'm very introverted. I don't like talking to people personally.
Face to face.
Face to face. If I have to sit and hold this is when I was younger. I'm certainly better about it now. But when I went to work in radio, I could sit in a room and I could broadcast and play music.
It's great, isn't it? You're in a box. You can close your eyes, do what you want.
It was just great. It was great. And my mother said, "Where are you going to find somebody to let you play records on air? Who's going to pay you to do that?"
This sounds familiar.
Yeah. And so that was and I enjoyed it so much. And I said, boy, I could work in chemistry. I could work as a mathematician. I could do a lot of things. But when I look at this, I go, this is so much. And when I did it for the first week, I said,
did you walk right in on air, or were you having to do like T-Boy and all the rest of it?
Oh, no. They threw me into it.
Yeah?
Oh, my. I don't have any air checks for my first couple of shifts, but, it was horrible. It was just a train wreck.
Ditto. And I have mine.
I stepped on more vocals than Gulliver. Are you kidding? Oh, boy. It was nasty.
And you went on from, I guess as part of the same time, as being a stage actor, a director, a TV sitcom writer in Hollywood.
I did.
So this is part of the Screenwriters Guild, who are only just working again, basically.
I was in the Screenwriters Guild, and I did vote for the Oscars in 1978. I worked as a writer's assistant for a bunch of American sitcoms like Happy Days, a show called James at 15. But I was a writer's assistant, so I was a little more than a gopher.
It's a big room full of people around a big table.
Yeah, but they didn't really pay
contributing,
attention.
no?
I was 25, 26 years old. I didn't pay attention. I wasn't one of the bright, shining lights. It's just a job I got.
So Henry Winkler wasn't like next door?
It's funny about Henry, but I met him a few times, and then I met him about 10 years ago at an event, and I was the only one there. It was me and him, and I was sitting there, and it was well known in the business that if you talk to Henry, he was a sweet guy. He's a very sweet guy, and he is as nice as people think he is. You don't mention Fonzie.
You don't say Fonzie? You can't say Fonzarelli?
That was it. You said you don't talk about Fonzie to him. It's just not. And he used to, I don't know if the show played in the UK, we had a show called Hollywood Squares. Okay. Yeah. All right.
So we have an equivalent.
Okay. A game show called Hollywood Squares that came back. It ran in the 60s and 70s, and then suddenly it came back. Henry Winkler was the producer of that show. So when you didn't see him a lot as an actor, he was behind the scenes. He was producing the show. So when I met him, it was part of Hollywood Squares. So Henry shows up. He never appeared on the show, so he showed up. And he and I are sitting in this room, and I had the whole thing in my head. I'm going, and he doesn't remember me from the 70s. It was years ago. I'm sitting there going, don't talk about Fonzie. Don't talk about Fonzie. Don't talk about. And I saw him, and I started talking about his stage work, because he had just finished a show in New York. And I said, hey, and he, John Ritter, the actor, he and John Ritter were best friends. And I started off by talking to him, and Ritter had just died like a week before. So we started talking about John Ritter. Well, it's like I handed him money. He goes, oh, yeah. I said, I bet the show you were in, it was a Neil Simon show. It was just great, I hear, and you got great reviews. Oh, I loved how, when I showed up at the stage and I started talking, he really opened up. So these guys love talking about their stage.
Oh, yeah.
But he didn't want to talk about Fonzie. But now...
He's okay about it again.
Oh, now he's okay with it. But he went through a period, from what I understand...
Because I wonder, I suppose, that what you've heard from certain actors where they say, I just don't want to be known for that.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
But I do other stuff. I just don't talk about anything else I've done.
This is why everybody comes to you. This is all they want to talk about. Is your radio show. But you're more than that, aren't you?
We never talk about this. Everybody else is far more interesting. BayRadio International's new US correspondent, everybody. Rich Reynolds is with us. We'll be talking more after the break here on BayRadio International.
You're listening to BayRadio.
Gordon, who also lives in Valencia, where you live, has been talking about how good the restaurants are.
Oh, I love the restaurants there, and they're not expensive, but we have seen the cost of the Menú del Día go up quite a bit especially since COVID. But you can still get a good meal for 10, 12 euros, which is awfully good. I mean, you can't get that in the States. I was back there for a wedding. My niece got married back in December, and we went to a plain old diner, just regular generic American food, hamburgers, hot dogs,
surf and turf,
love that surf and turf, love that stuff. And we, for 3 or 4 of us, we dropped around $150. It's just too much. It's just too much, and it's so expensive to live there anymore.
And so it is cheaper to live in Spain than the US. Then?
About half cost.
About half.
Yeah.
How do people live in the States? It's just incredible.
It's really incredible because you can. The house that I lived in Portland was we sold for at a pretty nice profit after 20 years, of course, but. The average cost in a city like Portland, which is a medium-sized city, you could say it's around the 23rd, 24th market, is $600,000, $700,000. That's what you have to make the average salary's got to be $250,000. In a lot of cities.
That's not Spain.
Yeah, it isn't. It isn't.
By any stretch, we were just talking about the minimum wage in Spain going up to 15,600 and something.
Yeah, yeah. So it's
not euros, not dollars.
I know, a lot of zeros, but it's a case where you can live here a lot better, a lot better life. So.
Well, we're very glad to have you here, and very lucky, in fact, especially with we're heading into this election year. So we'll be.
Is there an election?
We'll be probing your mind to try and explain to us other unknowledgeable expats about exactly what happens and how the whole thing works. We've been hearing these screaming headlines: "Big win for Trump in Iowa." How big was this win?
I'll tell you what, he got 59% of the vote. That's a massive amount.
That sounds like a lot.
That's a massive amount. And he got a grand total of 59,000 votes. That's it.
Hang on, 59,000 votes is 59% of the vote.
That's right. There are 100,000 people that voted in the state of Iowa. 15%.
Only 15% voted.
Only 15% voted. Now, everybody knows about the weather. It was...
Well, he was saying that right at the beginning. He always likes to have an excuse beforehand, obviously.
And you know what? He would have a point, but it was like 40 below Fahrenheit. I don't even know what that is in centigrade, but it was cold, and those people couldn't move. So take that with a grain of salt. That it was a big victory. It was the largest victory in the history of the Iowa primary.
Okay, so it is a big victory then.
It was a big victory.
Yeah.
Ron DeSantis got 21%. Nikki Haley got 19%. Yeah, and they both. But Nikki Haley was also claiming she had a victory. Oh, we're on the right track, and DeSantis
she got more than she was expecting. You mean?
She got more than she expected. So it's Trump's. It's his to lose going forward. But there are still. You ready? There are 54 more primaries. 50 there now. There are 50 states. But also the District of Columbia and Guam, and they all have primaries now.
Right, okay, so
they're not. The candidates are not going to be going to Guam. They'll be doing that all. They'll be literally phoning it in.
Well, actually, face it, Trump hasn't gone anywhere either, has he?
He has. He went to. He did go to Iowa, and then he canceled a bunch of his appearances.
That's right. And he was heading off to the next one, right. But he's made a court stop. Because he's in court for one of. There are so many different things that they're chasing him for at the moment, and I've lost it for the moment. But anyway, so he is going off to the next one. If you could just explain to us what is a caucus, because we've heard this word being thrown around. It's not one we use in Britain.
There are only 4 states in the United States that have caucuses. Iowa is one of them, and Iowa wanted to be first. It's in their constitution that they have to be first. It's in nobody else's constitution, but Iowa is really. It's important to them that they were first, but you need to know this is not a homogeneous state. This is a state that is 95% white, very little minority voting, very little Hispanic voting, and the same thing in a different way with New Hampshire, which is second. These are states. I mean, there are 3 million people who live in Iowa out of 331 million. It's a small state, New Hampshire is even smaller, and so it's going to be an even smaller sample. But
he is going to go to New Hampshire. Is that because he doesn't feel he has as much support as he might have otherwise?
He doesn't have as much support, and Nikki Haley has a real chance to overtake him. Mm-hmm. DeSantis is completely passing on campaigning there. He's completely given it up.
So they make their minds up, kind of like, I know where it's worth going, I know where it isn't. Yeah. And like you say, this primary system, so there are 54 primaries, is that what you said?
55.
55 primaries.
55 primaries. And keep in mind, the Democrats also have 55 primaries. So if you go down between
Does that mean like election rally? Is that what it is?
It is. It's like a rally. So if you look at each state individually has its own election, okay, for each party. The thing is, this year, because the Democrats have their guy chosen, it's going to be Joe Biden. Nobody else is going to contest him because that's decorum. You don't. I don't say you don't, but it's bad form to go and run against an incumbent.
And he wouldn't get any support from the party.
He wouldn't get any support.
Or he or she.
If I stood up and said, you know what, I'm going to run against you, Joe, because you're too old, the Democratic Party would say they would do what they could to make sure I didn't even get a single vote.
That's got to be a worry, though, because he is old. And it does come across as somewhat infirm at times.
He is, and it's a bit of a problem. And as we were talking off air, I think that the whole idea of age, you can't get around it. Nothing you do, I could swing as much as I could to make you look like, oh, you're too tall, you're too short, because that's all perception. But 80, 81 years old, and when you're going to be 86 when you leave office, well, folks, I can't get around that. And the minute somebody starts talking about age, that's like a snowball running downhill.
In America, they seem to be quite cutthroat in politics generally, but nobody, they're not. The opposite side aren't really going for that at the moment. I guess it's only a matter of time before Donald Trump will jump in there again with it. Because he will.
He will. He definitely will. And if that's the guy you want, if that's the sort of cutthroat way to do things and calling people names, that's his MO. That's what he likes to do. You'll find that doesn't really happen among people in the Democratic Party. The Republican Party is the party of illegal abortions. They're the party of big business, small government, things like that. Eliminating health care. That's a big thing. They want to eliminate health care.
Obamacare was a big thing. I remember.
They want to get rid of Obamacare.
Yeah.
Well, my daughter was on Obamacare, and I got to tell you something. It's because of Obamacare that she was healthy. But Trump actually stands up and says, "I want to eliminate Obamacare."
So how many Americans don't have health care?
I think it's around 15 million. That's a lot.
Oh my God, that is actually
a lot.
rather worrying.
You don't hold me to that number, but I think it's around 15 million. But the thing is that the American system, you run for president for about 2 years. So
that's an awful long time.
Nikki Haley's been running for president for a year, already for a year. Joe Biden's been running for a year. It's a long time.
And yet Donald is out ahead in the polls.
He's way ahead. He's way ahead. As a matter of fact, the other two might as well say, and I'm not advocating for anything. They ought to just go, I give up. Because between the two of them, the people came in second, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, they came in, they spent, I think I read $200 million.
Yeah, it costs, doesn't it, to run?
So they could come in second. $200 million to come in second. Yeah. And I don't think Donald Trump spent much of anything, because he just go to these rallies and he stands up and he goes,
"That's it.
That's it."
Puts on his hat, "Make America Great Again."
It's the power of.
I've seen a great hat that one of my friends had, and it was exactly the same. The red cap, "Make America Great Britain Again," which I think it's going way back. That we're not going to go that far back.
What was that, during Churchill?
It was the last time he ran, actually, when he became president. No, it was way before Churchill, when America was British. It's a long time ago.
That long ago.
It's even that much further.
I think I saw that painting.
Exactly. There were no cameras in those days at all. So I know we're going to, we'll play it straight down the line and talk about both sides of the political persuasion. But interestingly, as I understand it, in the States, depends which state you come from, depends on whether you're Democrat or Republican generally.
It does.
And it's the same pretty much in households, and yet in your household, you and your brother are completely different sides of the coin.
They are.
How did that happen?
They are. And as a matter of fact, my brother and I try not to talk about politics. And he crossed that line about a week ago when he called me up and he started going off on Kamala Harris and how she's not keeping the border safe.
Well, that was the first thing I said to you, wasn't it? We haven't really heard from her. No. We haven't heard about her.
No, she's kept a really low profile, and I think she better be getting busy.
And she will be running for vice president. Then she will be.
She will. She will. It won't be anybody else. That would be a major.
We know surprise. Already if it were.
If suddenly they pick you as the vice president or me, it would be an amazing thing. But yeah, she'll be the other. She'll be running with Joe.
And why do you think we haven't heard much about her? What's the reasoning behind that? Because surely the party decide how high profile the vice president is to be.
I don't know.
And of course, the wall, the border issue, which has stopped things like money going to Israel and Ukraine while they fight it out, on Capitol Hill. Has she done anything with the wall? Well, with the wall or with the border? We just don't hear about it.
She's made periodic appearances down there, but not a lot. And I'm just kind of surprised that we are. If you're in another country where you only start running for office a month out or 2 months out, that's one thing. But this is America, where you're running 2 years out. I mean, she really needs to be about it. She really needs to be sticking her footprint in there to say, hey, this ticket, Joe and I have done good things.
Well, I'm sure it's not an individual choice, is it? No. I mean, it must be the party making that choice to keep Joe in the spotlight, maybe because they're worried that he might be failing somewhat in the polls from what they would expect, so they need to keep his profile up and they keep her in the background, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll talk more. American politics, it's a big year, and we'll look at the international scene after the break with Rich Reynolds here on BayRadio International.
You're listening to BayRadio.
BayRadio International. Rich Reynolds, our new US correspondent, with us this afternoon. We've been talking about the political system in the United States. And it depends on which channel you watch as to what political view you get. They're not unbiased, are they? They are completely biased for one or the other, Republican or Democrat.
They try not to be, but it inadvertently falls that way. And you have Fox on the far right. And you have MSNBC, CNN, and also then you have the mainstream networks, ABC, CBS, NBC. Kind of, they try to play it right down the middle, but inadvertently, when Trump does stupid things, which happens, he does tend to say outrageous things. Fox, they apologize for him, or they don't run the story. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of things that happen where he's done something kind of foolish. It doesn't appear. But if Joe Biden slips, all of a sudden it appears on Fox.
Or mumbles.
But
you say he actually did have a speech impediment at
He
the time.
does have a speech impediment. He has, and he admits that he was a stutterer when he was a child. I'm not a friend of his. I've never met him or anything, but I have read that he did have an impediment. And Trump will make fun of that, the fact that he stutters. And I go, well, who would do that? Make fun of.
Well, that's Trump.
Well, that's true.
I imagine then, if you only get a biased view from whichever channel you watch, whichever state you come from, whatever you're hearing in whichever family.
It's the bubble.
You are in that particular bubble, which we've talked about actually. Since the likes of Facebook, people are only in one place. It's them and their like-minded friends. So this is very similar to the way that politics play out for the individual in the States. But I guess then that has an effect on the international stage as well, because then they'll only hear what that particular TV or radio station wants them to hear about the international stories.
That's correct. I mean, there's no way around that. It's got to be true in the UK. It's got to be true in a Balkan country. It's got to be true in Germany and France. And you've got certain outlets that want to make.
I'm not saying that UK media isn't biased, because it is slightly slewed in different ways. But nothing quite compared to the difference between Fox and CNN. So how are the things being played out in the United States? Because you do watch a lot of American TV. As far as first of all, that aid to Israel and Ukraine, which has been halted by Congress because of the issues that people have with the problem at the border not being sorted out with Mexico.
Well, the Republican Party would like to, and as people may know, there is a little bit more. The Republicans have a slightly more than 50% edge in Congress, and that means that all of them will vote for to withhold aid to Israel, to Ukraine, because there are a lot of Americans on that side who are very conservative, who think we really need to help these countries, but big but
begins at home.
How it's beginning to hurt, and how much can we do this? Should the money be better spent on the border, where it is? I don't care if you are a Republican or Democrat. You have to stand there and look at it every day and say, what can we do to stop this?
There's a major influx from South America, isn't there?
The city of New York. The city of New York recently had 150,000 people.
Well, they started to bus people in from the border to make the point. So because initially, much like Southern Europe, where migration was coming into the southern part of the country, that was happening in the United States, and I'm not quite sure of the. Well, I'll get into the rights and wrongs of it, but they did start to do that to make New York realize what it was that was going on. Busing people up.
That's true. And what are you? I'm sure that you and others have heard the term sanctuary cities. And sanctuary cities are cities that are very liberal. They're very democratic. Who have said, "We will take your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, and that's okay. You can come here if you're running from gangs in South America. If you're trying to escape a bad situation,
life for you and your family.
We'll take you in." They may not take you in Dallas or Houston, but New York, San Francisco, Portland, I don't know what some of the other cities would be. A lot of them are on the West Coast. We will take your
Is that because they need workers? Because they do need an influx of new blood? Is it because of that, do you think? Because that's certainly what happened in Germany, a few years back.
Yeah, a lot of those, but a lot of the states that don't want people coming in from other countries, especially illegally, these are agrarian states like Iowa, like Nebraska. I mean, these are places that depend heavily on farm workers. These are states where the main crop is corn, soybeans, tomatoes, that sort of thing, and they need people to pick the crops. There are no white people picking these crops; they're all brown people. And they need that, but they don't want to pay for these people to come in. They don't want these people. I'm saying the royal they.
I understand.
I'm not. I don't want to speak for everybody, but there are a lot of people who don't want. They want their crops picked. They just don't want for people to come in.
We have a phrase in Britain, NIMBY, not in my backyard. It's kind of like, we agree with it, but we don't want people here. It's, very difficult situation. What about this conflict then? Iran basically behind what's been happening, using Israel and Hamas as an excuse. But, the issues with the Suez, Iran, Yemen, these goods not getting through. Ultimately, for the whole of the world, it's an issue as far as finances are concerned. We've just been through, the pandemic, where we saw the rise in daily food costs and the cost of living crisis. This is going to make it worse.
It is going to make it worse, and I don't know what the solution is, but they sank one of the boats. Was it yesterday? In the canal, and that's to say nothing of how that's going to hold up traffic in the
There's been another strike on the Houthis this afternoon, actually. It wasn't a planned one, apparently. It was just they saw an opportunity where a militant group that had been targeting vessels, that they could do something, and it resulted in a direct hit, apparently. So this is what they were doing.
Well, it's clearly going to get worse before it gets better. And I think once the U.S. military gets involved, and the UK and the British military, it's that coalition.
Well, we call it the special relationship. I'm not quite sure what you call it in the States.
Oh, we're bullying you.
Yeah, you're telling us what to do, right?
We're telling you what to do.
You owe us.
I mean, I'm a little bit a little ashamed of that, but it's like
that's the way it goes.
These are our good friends, the Americans, and we're going, sit over there.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
It's but I think it's going to.
But nobody else, though. Again, hang on. There were people supporting that action in slightly different ways, but not actually putting their pilots and seamen on the line, taking direct action.
Oh, my God. And there's a whole history of that, and it goes back to Vietnam. Mm-hmm. It's the minute you say, and it's Vietnam, and it's the Gulf War, and it's taking Americans, and Afghanistan. It's taking American boys and girls and putting them out there.
Boots on the ground.
And exactly, and having them return in boxes. Mm-hmm. That to say nothing about it being a bad thing, it's just it's a bad visual. It's a bad visual, and I know that's a clear way for Joe to lose this election is by saying, okay, we're going to go in there and we're going to send 100,000 troops into Yemen and mow these people down. It's not a good thing.
We're not going to see boots on the ground in Yemen.
I don't think anytime soon. I'll tell you what, not before the election.
No, and we'll come back to the election in future weeks. And it's great that you're going to be joining us every Tuesday.
You.
Well, you said you would. Maybe after this you might not. I don't know. But
I got running, screaming. It's been great.
But great. Good to talk to you. Rich Reynolds, good to have you on Bay Radio International. Thanks very much indeed for your time today.
Thanks, Cal.